So you've got a 67 BJ8 you've had for 26 years. Question as it relates to the shims in the steering box. You want to further go into
Sure.
any additional detail there,
Yeah,
Tom?
sure. Sure, Pete. Thank you. Um, I'm down here in New Jersey, just so you guys know. I'm not, I'm part of, I also belong to the Austin-Healey Sports and Touring Club. In fact, I'm the
Yep.
editor of their Flash magazine. But I recently joined the New England chapter of the Austin-Healey Club of America. So thanks a lot for doing this. This is great.
You're welcome.
Quick question about, well, maybe not so quick, but let's see if you can help. I have taken, went into my BJ8 steering box last year and to go after a leak. And when I took the end plate off, I noticed that there's some shims in there. And I can find nothing to indicate a starting point or what your objective is with those shims. You know, typically you put back what you found in the thing, but I had to adjust the end cap a little bit. It was dog-eared a bit, so I had to shave it down and flatten it, and which would have changed the shims. So I can find nothing to give you any guidance on what's shims to put in there and what the end result should look like. I imagine it's to adjust end play of the steering shaft, but I'm not exactly sure how you can tell whether the end play is set correctly or not. Obviously, it's very loose. That would tell you something's wrong, but I'm not sure how to tell if it's too tight. And I am experiencing a little bit of a difficulty when turning the wheel. You know, the normal high spot should be in the center, but it feels like it's off to the left now. And I don't believe it's the peg, because I didn't change anything that would have altered the center position of the steering shaft. So I have a feeling that it has something to do with those shims, too tight, too loose, or something like that. And I can find nothing on it. Perhaps it's simply a trial and error process, but I'm not sure when you know it's correctly set. So that's my question, if anybody has any insight on that.
So when you took it out, you've cleaned the steering box, and you've cleaned the shims. Have you added any or removed any shims?
I did. I changed it because I had to, as I said, I had to. My leaking problem, which I thought was the bottom seal that comes down to the pitman arm, I thought was the problem, but it actually turned out that seal wasn't leaking. It was simply weeping out of the end plate where the acorn nut is, and 4 bolts hold it in. Yep. When I took that off, I found out that the end plate was not perfectly flat on the inside. We're talking just a few thousandths, but it wasn't flat. So I flattened it, which would have changed the shim adjustment, I believe. Now, I found about 4 or 5 shims in there. They're unmarked as to their thicknesses, but I put them on a caliper and kind of figured out what they were, bought some new shims, and then you have to account for the gasket. So I kind of estimated. If I took a little metal off, I put a little metal in, but I'm not exactly sure whether I have it adjusted properly or not, and how to tell if it's adjusted properly or not. That's kind of, the shop manual is of no help, and the anything I found online doesn't seem to help much.
And have you re-greased the box?
Yes, I have.
And what did you use for grease?
The Penrite product.
Okay. We've had this question come up in the past, and there is a recommendation to use cornhole that you can get from John Deere.
I have that.
Okay.
That was my plan B if I couldn't stop the leak.
Yep. Well, that's certainly been highly recommended by both Bob Ewell and Bob Abbott that have restoration businesses, and they both of them have done that on a regular basis. Yeah, anyone else have any thoughts as it relates to shims for Tom's challenge that he's having with his BJ8 box? And what shims are necessary and how to do it?
Well, I think from my experience, it is a trial and error thing, and we usually put a bunch of shims in and see if there is any any up and down movement, and if there is, we take one out, and if there isn't, we put another one in until it's. I mean, you're preloading those two bearings, which is the secret to it, and as long as they're smooth and don't have any sort of lateral movement, then I think it's fine.
Okay, so what you're looking for, Bob, if I understand you correctly, is if you've got a little, when you say up and down movement, in and out of the steering shaft, if you sense a little movement in and out of the shaft, you would just continue to tighten that down until you don't feel any end play, if I'll call it that.
Yes, and if you have it even a thou too tight, you'll know it. You won't,
yeah, I have a feeling that's my problem. I have a feeling that it is too tight. So what your suggestion is to take some of those shims out and start with trial and error to put them back until you start to feel the end play is gone. Is that fair to say?
That's what we do, and
yeah, okay,
it seems to work.
All right, well, that's helpful. I mean, that was one of my questions, was how do you know when you're done, and I have a feeling, based on what we're talking about, that I don't have enough shims in there. I've probably got to tighten down a little too much, and that's why I'm feeling some resistance off center. So okay, I've got the car all ready to take that steering box apart, so I'll give it a try. Let you know how I make out.
And again, the cornhole grease is what the folks here recommend.
Cornhead.
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 Okay.
It's cornhead. Cornhole's a game.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Mr. Abbott.
Yeah. In fact, I even tapped a nipple into the filler screw of that steering box, so it can be filled with grease.
That sounds like a good idea. Okay, great. Any other questions, Tom?
No, but thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
No, you're very welcome. Appreciate you joining us. So, let me see. I don't believe Dave fit. I don't believe you're on the call. Dave's got a 54-100, and he's got a problem with his fuel gauge. So I will give him some of that information about those different companies that could possibly fix his fuel gauge on that.
Pete, just
please,
not to go back on an old subject, but I was wondering whether I should read it up. But I was happened to be reading about a company in London that looked just like Neisinger. Maybe you guys know about it. It's called Speedy Cables. There was an article in, I think it was Motorsports or something, magazine.
Okay.
And I thought to myself as I was reading it, and I made a bookmark of it, and that because I know Neisinger is out of business, and I took down some of the names you just put on in case we need instrumentation service. But this company, Speedy Cables in London, looks like they do it all with regard to British instrumentation. I realize you have to send your stuff to London, but just for what it's worth, you might want to jot it down and look at their website.
Okay, Speedy Cable, you said?
Yeah, that's the name of it. Let me just pull it up again on another device here and make sure.
Okay. Anyone on the call familiar with Speedy Cable? Okay.
Peter.
Not sure. Yes, sir.
Mark LeBlanc, I think, uses them. He's sent several instruments to them in England to have repaired on some of the BJ8s that he's restoring, including Mr.
Dave Bevins.
Yeah, Dave Bevins' car.
Yep. So, okay.
Here is their website, Speedy Cables in London, England. So
what that was Bob Britton who just mentioned that. So Mark LeBlanc is one of our members. He's got a restoration shop in southern New Hampshire, and he's been utilizing Speedy Cable.
Yeah, he says they ship. I mean, getting the instruments back and forth is quick. It's just that getting them from them takes long. They're backlogged like everyone else. But once they
Okay,
ship it, it only takes a few days for them to get them.
Great. So,
Yeah,
thanks, Tom, on that. I'll add that to our website.
Peter, I wanted to clarify something on Neisinger. It's not out of business. They aren't doing repairs because that flood wiped out their spares inventory that they'd accumulated for years, but they went to Smith's, who was the original manufacturer for the gauges, and they have Smith's reproducing the gauges now with all the original machine work and dials and everything. And they said our prices for a new gauge is comparable to getting them repaired and to check with them. So it's another option for people.
And is it still under Nossinger's? Is that the?
Yeah, still, yeah, it's on it's on their website, and I spoke to someone there one day too about that. So, and at the time, I think buying a brand new tacker, I think it was a speedometer for a Mark I was like $400. And that's not too much more than getting one repaired and all that. So,
Right. Okay. Thanks, Ted.
Another option.
Yep. I'll clarify that also. Excellent. Are there other questions this evening that people on the call have?
I have a couple questions.
Please.
So we have a 1960 here. Let me turn my video on. Sorry.
No problems.
Rude not to use video. Here we go.
Hi, Eric.
Hi. So this 1966 3000's been in our family for about 45 years. My father just passed it down to me, and so now I'm trying to repair a lot of little things that have been going on with it. First question: bleeding brakes. Is that something I've never done before? Is that something that I should look at YouTube and figure out how to do? It looks fairly simple, or am I likely to get in over my head and break something I shouldn't break? And then I talked to a mechanic of newer cars. He recommended using a gravity bleeding as opposed to pushing down on the brake pedal, because he said the older master cylinders may, if I push down on the pedal, it may go further than it's used to traveling, and I may end up with bigger issues. So is there a recommendation, assuming I bleed, just any recommended sites to look at, or just any of them?
So just a couple of questions. So has the car been well maintained through the years, Eric?
Yes, it has. It's he hasn't. He said he used to bleed it every couple of years with my brother-in-law that does know that stuff.
Yep.
It's pretty much sat for the past 2 years. Hasn't really done much. It runs beautiful. The starter was almost dead. It had 3 out of 4 brushes were shot. I just had that rebuilt. So now it fires up beautiful, and it runs fine. The brake pedal's a little spongy, but it doesn't push all the way past half. I had a mechanic tell me I need a new brake cylinder, a master cylinder. I think he's full of it. I think he's just trying to, make some extra money off me. So it doesn't push all the way to the floor. So that's why bleeding was recommended to me.
Okay. And do you know, what fluid is in there? Do you know, did your father happen to? I'm sorry, no clue? Okay.
No idea.
Okay. Well, I would suspect it's probably still the original .3. I mean, some people have converted to silicone, because silicone will not, if you spill any, will not damage any of your paint. But there's also some thoughts that silicone possibly can create some air in the system, and you don't get the same hard brake pedal that you do with the .3, which is the original one. But the .3 is corrosive, so you want to be really careful when you're doing it, that you don't, you've got rags around it. You don't want to be spilling that, because it will peel your paint. So
how would I know what's in there, or can they be mixed together if I don't know?
They definitely can't be mixed.
.5, which is silicone, is usually purple.
Right.
Okay.
If it's old, it may not be, but if it's usually purple, so that's the dead giveaway. If it's clear, it's .3 or 4 probably.
Also, I just read, and I tried this out, is the silicone, if you pour it, the .3, .4 is hydrophilic, so it absorbs water. And if you pour the silicone into a glass of water, it'll just sit right at the top. But I guess if I didn't try this with I did that with the silicone, it sure did, just right at the very top. If you pour in the the .3.4, I think you can kind of mix it up a little bit and you see it sort of disperse a bit more in the water than you can with the silicone if you want to differentiate what you've already got in the car.
So drain a little, open the nipple, bleed a little bit out, and then just look at it with water, see if it disperses, see if it sits on the water.
Right. And then if you got any .3 or .4, try a little bit of that and compare it and see if you see a difference.
Is there between .3 and .4, are those interchangeable or three different things? .3, .4, or .5? I need to know.
They're completely interchangeable. .4 has just got a higher temperature resistance.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Just a suggestion, if you haven't changed it in several years, you probably should just replace it all.
Yeah, that's true.
So is the carbon sitting inside, Eric, or outside?
It just moved down to Florida. It's been in Vermont for the past 40 years.
Okay.
I just had it shipped down here. It sat inside during the winter. Actually, it used to be inside all the time, and then for the past 2 years, it sat outside only during the summer months because of a house sale.
Okay. So where are you in Florida now?
Vero Beach.
Okay, great. So
the other thing I was going to say, I think it was mentioned a couple of sessions ago, is that there is a .5.1, which is not silicone. You want to make sure you don't get the .5.1 if you want to put silicone in there.
So should I'm asking more questions than I planned on here. So should I consider emptying it completely and switching over to a .5 silicone? Or again, having never done this before, I don't really want to get in over my head. It says I should check the calipers before I go too far, check the drums. I've read something about tightening them and then backing out clicks. I haven't really done enough research to know what it is I'm supposed to do or what I'm supposed to look at to make sure things are working well.
What was what model Healey was it again? I'm sorry.
It's a 66 3000 BJ. BJ8.
Yep.
Just a couple of comments on you said someone suggested gravity bleeding. Did they explain what they meant by that?
He said just to he said not to push the brake pedal at all. He said just to open it and put it into a jar and just let it drain out by itself.
Yeah, that's I've tried this on many cars, and gravity bleeding, when it works, is pretty easy. You have to open up the master to allow the pressure to equalize.
Okay.
It works really well on my Corvette. I have never been able to do it on the Austin-Healey.
Okay.
The flow has never started, and I don't know why. And I just don't see why pushing down on the pedal is so. That's kind of the way everybody does it. If you don't have equipment to suck it out or create pressure in the system, so I wouldn't worry about. I think you'll have trouble getting a gravity bleed started. At least that's been my experience.
Okay.
If you just open it up, it'll probably just sit there.
Okay, and that's fine. He works on newer cars. He doesn't do Austin-Healey, so he just gave me his advice from.
Yeah, it's great when it works, but it's tough to get it to work. And just one other thing, if you do find you need a master cylinder in that car, most of the master cylinders that I've come across for these British cars, either the clutch or the brake, are not particularly high quality. The Girling masters are available through a company called Pegasus Automotive. You can get them in the different bore diameters that are necessary for the Healeys, and they're much more expensive than a Mospod or somebody else. They're like $125, but they are worth it. It's the original Girling master cylinder. The only thing you have to change is the plunger, and that's easy. Just take out the C-clip, put your old plunger in, and you're back in business. Cool. So if you do find you need a master cylinder, I'd recommend going to the Girling one from a company called Pegasus, and you'll have to know the bore diameter. The brake on that car, I believe, is 7/8 of an inch on the brake master cylinder. The clutch is slightly smaller.
And so Eric, you have the ability to get the car up on jack stands?
I will. I'm going to go to I'm going to get one of those nice pump jacks, and then I'll put the jack stands under each wheel.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm assuming, assuming I can get it under there. Obviously the car sits pretty low, so I have to figure out what will actually fit under there.
Yeah. So the recommendation is you don't want to be jacking the car on that front plate. So you want to put a 2x4 if you're going to be jacking there to get that to relieve pressure. You do not want to be jacking on that front cross member right in the center of the car.
Okay.
You want to
Most
spread
of
the
them are-
weight.
Most of them are
Spread...
concave.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
Yeah, you really
was
want to
just gonna-
spread that weight. Sorry.
I was just going to quip that most of those cross members are concave for that reason.
Right.
Should I just Google 2x4 jacking front Austin-Healey and I'll find something specifically documenting what you're talking about?
You may not. I don't know. That's
Okay.
a good question.
Okay.
If I actually have my Healy on a lift with the front end jacked up right now and the wheels and tires off of it in preparation for working on the steering box. If you want to contact me after this, I'll shoot you a picture of exactly what Pete's talking about.
Perfect. How do I contact you, Tom?
Just give me, Pete, is it okay if I take care
Sure.
of this one while everybody's waiting? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just email me at T as in Tom, P as in Peter, MUL48@gmail.com. I'll shoot you a photograph. You'll understand exactly what Pete's talking about.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Can I ask you a second question or?
Well, yeah. So before we do that, so anyone else on the call have recommendations for Eric as a first time for bleeding the brakes on this BJ8?
Well, he just made a comment that he would change the fluid, drain the fluid and put .5 in it. And you cannot do that because they'll contaminate. You're going to have to clean the entire system out to put .5 in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I meant to mention that earlier when you said that. I wouldn't go to .5. I'd stick with 3 or 4.
You just want to be careful. You don't want to get that, on any of your painted surfaces.
Yeah, I saw the warnings online about that. So yeah, I'm tiny bit concerned, but I'll just be super careful.
Yeah, you have rags around it, and if you wipe it up quickly and you clean it off, you're okay. You just don't want it to sit; it'll bubble up the paint.
Got it. Okay.
But I agree with both Richard and Tom. My experience is, .3, .4 is what they've always had, and it's probably the best alternative still today.
All right, I'll go with that. And then my understanding at a high level is that I just I make sure there's enough in the master cylinder, bleed until it's clear, close it up, move on to the next one, and I keep topping off the master cylinder to make sure I don't run it dry. Something along those lines.
100% correct, Eric.
And I have to open the master cylinder so that it doesn't create a vacuum.
Yes, you want the cap off.
Okay.
Someone else have somebody?
I believe that master cylinder, I believe, is vented anyway, Peter. But the other piece to this is that you start with the brake cylinder or the wheel cylinder furthest away from the master cylinder, work your way back to the nearest.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
And Eric, does that car have a brake servo?
I don't know what that means.
You said it was a 66, you said?
66, yes.
3,000, so it's a BJ. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, Bob Abbott saying it would have a servo, a BJ8.
Yeah, I believe it. I don't recall whether optional or not, but almost all of them have brake servos. So there's a bleed in that as well.
Okay.
There's actually another master cylinder in the servo.
Oh, okay.
Or a slave. Let's call it a slave cylinder. Yeah.
I'll look that up too. Thank you.
Because
that would be right.
also get
That would be right. That would be
Go ahead,
right
sorry,
in front
Tom.
of the passenger footwell.
Okay.
So, Tom, if you went to an auto parts store, you can also get a pump gun, if you will. It looks like a gun that will pull it through as well.
The other thing you may find helpful, and I got this from Moss years ago, you're going to have to bleed the fluid into some sort of receptacle, a jar, can, whatever. But they sell it, I think it's for about $20, a plastic bottle. And it has, on the top, it has two places, one to put the hose from the master cylinder or the wheel cylinder on top of it, and the other one has a check valve in it. So where you can pump, it goes one way, but air can't come back the other way. And I've been using that for years. It also has a magnetic disc on the side of it for the convenience of you can attach it to something so you don't knock the bottle over, as I used to do. Like you could put it to your jack stand or something. And it's about $20. I found it very useful.
So I got you. So when I open that bleed valve and I push down on the brake, when I release that brake, it could suck air back up.
Absolutely will. And normally you keep the pedal to the floor and then you shut it and then you can let it off. With this, you should still do that in my experience. But this bottle has a check valve in it. So when you push it down, it goes one way. The check valve will allow any air from coming back up.
Gotcha.
So Eric,
I knew I needed 2 people. I didn't understand why. Now I got it.
It's a 2-person job, Eric.
Yeah.
Yep. And I read online about 10 minutes per wheel. Is that correct? About an hour?
Depends how hard of a pedal you can get. you may be there longer, or you may get it the first time.
Got it. Okay. And you recommend this yearly, generally?
That's most people don't do it yearly. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Do it when you need it. It gets spongy.
Yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
So I guess I should have asked, the initial question I should have asked is, the brake is a little spongy when I push on it. Is that indicative of needing a bleeding? I went by a recommendation of my dad, who is not super mechanically inclined, but he's had it long enough to, give some advice.
Your dad is right.
Thank you. Can I ask an unrelated question now?
Sure.
Okay, so the gas gauge was reading empty. So I ordered a new fuel sending unit off Moss. I took off the old one, put the new one on. It came with a much larger rubber gasket than was there before. It was just a paper thin little gasket.
Was it cork? The one you took off?
I'm not sure. I didn't throw it out. I still have it, but it was tiny. It was like a millimeter thick, or really, probably wasn't paper, but it was really, really thin. Maybe 10 millimeters.
So when you say larger, Eric, you mean just thicker?
Yeah. So the new one is a thick rubber, maybe a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch thick. Totally different looking. The original screws were tiny to fit only the original gasket. I originally reused that gasket with the original screws, put it back together again, filled it up with fuel, and then I found fuel in my trunk. So I said, oh, okay, let's siphon out the fuel again. I siphoned it out. My neighbor, who recommended using the gravity approach, suggested that I go get longer screws and use the rubber one that came with it. So I got longer screws, same diameter, same threads, put that in, and I found that as I'm tightening it, if it almost strips. Like you tighten it and it's not actually tightening tighter. It gets to a point where it doesn't get any tighter. So I figured that was good enough. I haven't filled the tank up full for fear of it overflowing again. The trunk, when I open it, it definitely has a gas smell in it. So I'm airing that out before I start the car up and drive it anywhere. But I honestly haven't driven it anywhere since I've done this, because I'm just a little bit nervous about that whole thing.
Those new rubber gaskets are because they're compatible with if you're running fuel with ethanol in it.
Oh, okay.
If you're not running ethanol, you can go back to the cork gasket, the original.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a paper gasket, Eric. It should have been a cork gasket.
It may have been cork. I don't know what it was made of, but
you can buy them for $50.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Your problem now is I'm hearing an echo when I try to talk. Can you guys hear that echo?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how to correct that.
Yes, two.
Do you have 2 devices on right now, Bob, or just a single computer?
I only had I had a hard time connecting to wanted to download a whole new Zoom program.
I see two displays for Bob Abbott. I see a video one and just a name.
All right.
Yeah, right. There you
Well,
go.
I'll
Yeah.
mute my
I
name.
do too, yeah.
You're twice as good, Bob.
Well, it's still there.
Yeah, you must be connected twice.
Well, yes, I am. Well,
Yep.
you're not going to be able to understand what I wanted to say anyhow. I'm going to drop out and try to reconnect.
Okay, thanks, Bob. So, Eric, it's advisable not to fill the tank all the way ever.
Okay.
You know, that is one of the challenges that you have there with that sending unit. It's you know, fill it up, but don't
Okay.
like over top it up. That's not
Yeah.
a good thing to do.
Fill it and drive it a bit. Got it. Okay.
And it's worse on warm days. So, you know, a hot Florida summer day, don't fill it to the top then either, because it expands.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
You could have gas, you know, filling up your trunk again, which you don't want.
So should I be, my neighbor also recommended getting a slightly wider bolt and self-tapping, and someone else said, hell no, don't even go that route. So
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
okay. The fact that when I tighten it down, it doesn't cinch tight. Like one of them, it just doesn't even tighten at all. It's tight enough. The others kind of are tight enough. Just don't worry about it. It's good enough.
Well, it sounds like you must have that stripped.
Yeah.
It may be, it's brand new screw, so it would be stripped and it was before I took it off. It was like that since I took off the old one.
You know, it sounds like the threads inside on the top of that tank are stripped.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why you can't get a solid connection.
So I should tap it?
I would.
Again, you don't want to get any thread. You don't want to get any threads into the gas.
Yeah, different problem. Yep.
When you have had the sending unit out, you're able to get a look at the tank itself. I mean, is the tank in good shape inside? Is it rusted or anything or corroded?
It looked good. When I looked in there, everything looks good. The outside of it, the inside, everything looked good. The old fuel sending unit was full of fuel, so that's why that wasn't working.
Yeah. Okay, I was just trying to give you an excuse to put a new tank in there, but okay.
Hey, Eric, I would, you know, get the one cinched down that you can and see how it goes. I wouldn't try to do anything else.
And just gas fumes in the trunk is not really a bad thing, or it's typical.
It is typical, and then the problem is you've got that into that. You know, you get that into that liner. That is, you know, if you're trunk filling, you don't really ever get rid of that. So unless you do a thorough cleaning of that to try to get that, you know, gas that's penetrated into that that material.
Yeah, I'm not getting any leaking gas out at this point. It was it only leaked out. It never actually got on anything. It was just a little bit. So it's just smell. There's no actual liquid gas in the trunk.
Okay, well that's good.
Well, what size is the thread on that tank screws?
I think that's your problem, Eric. Where did you go buy the longer screws?
We have a local bolt store here in Vero Beach. I got stainless. I brought in the old ones. I had him match the thread to the new ones, and they just got them to be longer.
Well, the screw on that gas sending unit is a BA4. It's a very, very unique screw and thread. And when you bought the new sending unit, the salesperson should have asked you if you needed new screws, because that way you would have gotten the proper screws for it. If you're putting screws in there now and they feel like they screw in and then suddenly don't tighten up anymore, they're stripping the threads probably in the tank. And that's why they're not getting tight as they should, because it's an odd thread.
Okay.
The angle of it is very different. One of the few places that it's not an SAE screw or thread on the car. A couple different places like the carburetors would have that, but the gas tank itself, the little extra rim where the screw holes are, the threaded place is just unique for some reason. I can't tell you why, but it is, and it's very susceptible to stripping out the screws.
Okay.
you might be able to go with a coarser thread and then get a bite on it. That's what I've done in the past, gone from, if it's a fine thread, go to a coarse thread, and you might be able to get a bite on it. And the other thing is perhaps use like a oil resistant black silicone on the gasket.
Yeah, I did get that, what's it, Perma something or other that I sprayed on the gasket.
Permatex, yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, but I'd be concerned with, you don't want any gas smell back there. I wouldn't do it anyways. Particularly if you have a spark and your battery's back there, I wouldn't want any gasoline back there at all.
That's kind of why I haven't driven it lately. Okay, I'll look into coarser thread. Thank you.
Yeah, get a good seal on that. I think that's, for safety, that's priority. You can do it. You could figure out a higher thread. I mean, it's a thin thread. You could force a coarser thread in there and get it to bite. And it might be a little, like one works and the other doesn't, whatever. But, the main thing is to not have any leakage or fumes.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your guidance there.
Eric, did you have another question?
I do related, but again, I'm hogging the floor. Is there anyone else that has a question and I can come back?
You've got the floor.
Okay.
We like new young members like yourself.
So on that gauge, so after I changed it, I noticed that it does bounce all over the place. One thing my dad said, that's why he never changed it, because it was never accurate. But when I came to I get if I'm driving along at 80 miles an hour, it's not going to be accurate. But when I came to a stop at a traffic light, it's still bouncing all over the place. Is that expected? And even when I say bouncing, I know I have 3/4 of a tank. It was bouncing below 1.25 back and forth down there, and then it would shoot up to full, and then it would bounce. So it's kind of bouncing all over the place. And then finally, at some point, it did settle back on 3/4 when I was driving. But I don't know if there might be a grounding issue or something. The gauge needs to be adjusted.
Eric, your dad is right. He's right. They're historically terrible. They're not what's the word I want? They're not buffered at all. So any movement of the tank, of the fuel in the tank, is going to cause the gauge to bounce up and down. Stopping and starting will cause it to bounce up and down.
But
we always recommend that when you put gas in your tank, set the trip odometer to 0, and when you get to about 200 miles, put some more gas in the tank. Because the gauge isn't going to tell you how much gas you have.
Okay, yeah, that's what we were doing.
If it stops going back, if it stops going back and forth, Eric, it's broken.
So Eric, the other thing you may want to do is get a narrow stick, a clean stick, and mark, half, full, half, and that sort of, and use that as your gas gauge.
And stick that down the tube, down the neck.
Tank. Yep.
I have that. I actually have that stick, Eric, so I can give you the measurements as to what full is, because you have the same tank I have.
Oh,
Eric,
wow. Okay.
I have a BJ7, and you say you have a BJ8?
Yes.
Okay, how is the float orientated? To the rear or to the front?
It's to the front.
Okay, now this is what I read, that the BJ8, the float should be oriented to the back. The BJ7 is just the opposite. But I may be wrong about that, because there's a beam in there for the BJ7 that prevents it from going all the way to the bottom. Now, I'm going to give you a recommendation. This is what I did on the BJ8. I had the exact same problem. The gauge was all over the place. What I did is I installed a capacitor on the up at the gauge. There's one wire that runs from the tank up to the gauge. The gauge is grounded. You have to make sure that the gauge itself is grounded, that the little, just how it's mounted is clean, and that that's grounded. The wire going to it, you should put in a capacitor. And I'll give you, if you have a piece of paper there, you can write down on.
Yep.
Okay, 1 farad, 1 FD, 5.5 volts. You can buy it for $2 on eBay. Put that capacitor in line with the right at the gauge. Don't put it back on the tank, because that you don't want sparking back there, particularly with your sealing problems.
In line with the gauge, not the grounding one, but the other one coming from the tank.
No, the gauge itself is grounded. There's no other wire. There's only one single wire that goes to that gauge.
Got it. Okay.
That's hot. Okay. You want it in series with that hot wire going through the capacitor. The 1 farad, 5.5 volt. That's what I used anyways.
1 Faraday, 5.5 volt capacitor. Got it. Thank you.
That'll do the trick. And that helped me tremendously. It'll still bounce around a little bit, but when you fill it up, it's full. And when you're getting down, it gives you kind of a ballpark figure. And make sure that everything back there on the tank itself is clean. You have a good, ground and everything, and your wires are clear.
Yeah.
I've been through that. That's the only reason I gave you that speech.
Appreciate
Peter,
it. Thank you.
that center I bought from AH Spares cured my problem.
Did it, Ted? Okay.
Yeah, it's rock solid now.
I'm not sure if you heard that, Eric. So Ted Stan bought a new gauge from AH Spares in the UK, and that solved his problem.
There's a new center.
New sending unit.
Yeah, they just developed a new one, I think.
There's a lot of echo I'm getting, so I didn't catch the whole thing. He bought a new sending unit and gauge from the same company in UK.
No, just a sender from AH Spares.
Oh, okay. So I bought the fender from Moss, so that might have been my mistake. I should from what was it? AH what?
AH Spares.
Yeah, if you're not speaking, maybe put your phones on mute. Because we are getting some background noise right now for some reason.
One more time, then. AH what?
Spares. SP.
Spares. Got it. Okay. Okay.
So Ted, have you found that new gauge from AH Spares more accurate than the old ones?
Well, it's just a sender, but my gauge is not that accurate. Seems to stay full, look full. And then once it starts to go, it goes down pretty fast. It tells me when I'm getting close to running. It seems pretty accurate at the low end, not so much at the high end.
Eric, any other questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I'm all out of questions. I'm sure I'll have them for your next. How often do you run these things?
We do the second Monday of the month at 7 o'clock.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll make sure I join in just to listen in the future. But no, this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, hope you enjoy your dad's car.
Well, I will.
Great. Other questions tonight?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to wire up the dash on my BJ7, and the plan of action I had was I was going to mount all the gauges and switches on the dash, mount the dash into the car, and then wire from underneath. Is that the proper procedure to do it? I heard that the wires are kind of short, so it's hard to do it the other way. Is that true, or what? Any tips on doing that?
You have a good chiropractor?
Fortunately, the seats are out. I figured I'd put some cushions on the floor so I can lay down.
Bruce, I've done it that way before. I've wired the gauges and put them in and then hook them up that way. I find that's easier.
Okay, good, thanks.
I haven't done it on a BJ7, but I've done it on my Sprites that way. I apologize for all this background noise we're getting tonight. I'm not quite sure why we're getting this.
There's someone on my screen in the lower right-hand corner. It's just a phone number. It's an 8072. That appears to be where it's coming from.
Thanks, Tom.
It's just a picture of a phone and a phone number. I don't know who it is. Very cool. Anybody else have that on the screen?
Yeah, same here.
I don't see that.
A 917 area code, Peter, 1917.
Can you click on that and can you mute it? I don't see that for some reason.
Whenever we get that background noise, that square lights up. So I assume that's where it's coming from. Like right now.
I'm not seeing that number on my screen.
917 is New York.
I exited full screen to see if that makes a difference.
Well, it's the green circle with a phone icon in the middle of it, and you can only see the number if you click on it.
Oh, that's my phone.
Somebody in that. I just heard somebody say that's my phone.
There's them all.
Thank you for turning that off. Okay, I didn't see. For some reason I couldn't see that on my screen, but that's much better. Okay, well, let's open it up to other questions that folks may have tonight.
I have a question. Has anybody used that corn head stuff in their idler? I mean, would it be recommended in the idler?
I have not. No.
I was just wondering if that would, you know, I mean, that's part of the steering system. So I was wondering if that would help tighten the steering up a little bit.
I've used it on, I converted, mine was leaking, and I put in the corn head oil as recommended, but I didn't notice any difference whatsoever on you know, performance or whatever.
I was just very curious because the oil has been in my idler and in my steering box for 31 years. It's never been changed. But
does it leak?
No,
it's
usually self-changing. Yeah.
That's why that's why I never bothered doing anything with it. It doesn't leak.
The only use the grease you use because changing out that seal is really difficult, very difficult, and you don't really need oil. You can use grease; it works perfectly fine. And they recommend the cornhead grease to John Deere for whatever reason. At any rate, I put it in mine, and it's been a year and a half, and I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. It's been fine.
Yeah, the cornhead grease is unique in that it doesn't cavitate. In other words, it doesn't create vacant voids in the grease like conventional grease would do. That's why they recommend it.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and it says it's not any has no intended purpose to improve the steering or tighten it. It's just as Dave said, it's just to prevent leaking, you know, to stop the leaking.
Well, I guess maybe I'll wait until it starts leaking.
Okay.
I wish other things didn't leak.
Now you're talking about the car, not yourself, Bob, right?
Yeah, the car.
Other questions?
Pete, I had a quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Rupert.
So after many years, about 20 plus years of ownership of my Healey, I think it's about time that I do some preventative maintenance, and I was going to replace the tires on the car, which are, you know, which need doing. I was considering whether I should replace the wire wheels as well. The splines are good. They're not sharp. They seem in good shape. There's a few splines that are a little loose, but I was considering, do I replace the tires and the wheels, or should I just take the tires off, send the wheels down to Hendricks and have him work his magic and put new tires on and send them back again?
Do you have any Healey scuttle shake, Rupert?
I do. What I understand there's numerous things it can be, from the tires to the drive shaft to numerous things, but yes, I do.
Brake drums.
Yes.
So I just put new wheels and tires last year on my BG8 from Alan Hendricks. He also shaves and balances them. It made a world of difference. Okay. I would highly recommend doing both.
Both. Okay.
If you can afford it, I would highly recommend doing both.
Got it.
It's not a cheap. I
And
think I
you're
paid.
sure the
Go
you're
ahead.
sure the splines, if you're gonna put new wires on it, you sure the splines are in good condition?
I've seen bad ones and I've seen brand new ones, and mine are sort of in the middle. So they're not sharp, which I understand is when they round off the splines. So I think they're not bad, but they're old. But they haven't done a lot of miles. So
you may want to replace those too, Rupert.
Yeah, that gets even more
expensive. You want to make sure that you keep those greased. Whenever you put the tires back on, make sure you re-grease those.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but they should be sharp.
Yeah, I take them
Pete,
off.
did you have Hendrix do your balance your rear drums as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I did that. That was very useful as well, I thought.
Okay.
So I originally, when I first bought the car, Ken Beck did work on it and he said 2 of my wheels were square, and so we got them as good as we could, but then replacing them, later with Alan Hendrix, and I did it 5-6 years later, so it wasn't an immediate thing there, but it took away all the scuttle shake, and it made a huge difference.
That's good to know.
I think I paid, man, it was like $2,000 for the 4 wheels and tires, and it made I went with painted. I didn't go chrome. But it made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think I would go with painted the same, and 55 miles an hour is the classic shake, as everybody knows. So,
the old shimmy that my father had in his Rambler from 1970, 55 to 60. But yeah, scuttle and typically, do you have a BJ8?
It is, yeah. 1965 BJ8. Yeah.
Yeah, I find the convertibles are worse with scuttle shake than the roadsters, is my experience. And so I highly recommend Alan. I think he's great.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Yeah, Pete, Dave Francis, new member. Thanks for letting me in here, guys. I can tell you're technically head and shoulders above anything I've ever been involved with. But I'm an old Healey owner, old in terms of my personal age, but I had a 60 Mark I that I had for 6 years, sold it in 68. I've regretted it for 55 years. just bought a BN4, a 57 BN4, take possession of it this week. So 55 years between cars, and I'm over the hill, over the top in terms of getting this car.
Yeah, this is Tom Klein's car, right, Dave?
Yes, it is.
Yep. We know Tom well.
I have a remarkable story about how I literally tripped over Tom in Essex. I'll tell that someday, but I won't take your time up tonight. At any rate, I'm 6'4", 220. I didn't have a problem getting in my 60. I used to pull it on like a glove, but I'm trying to expand the envelope of the cockpit. First of all, I'm taking I'm going to put a 15-inch Modelito leather flat steering wheel on to replace a 17-inch banjo. I'm working with a service guy who's taken care of this guy, believe it or not, for 40 years in Essex, Connecticut. But I'm going to try to figure out how to move the seat back about 2 inches. And there was an article that I picked up, and I may have been in one of the New England magazines. I don't know. I saw it about 2 months ago. I didn't copy it, about how to move the seat back. There's another article on tilting the seat back also.
Yep.
So
changing the rate.
Yeah, some room. Any other big and tall guys here who've done some conversion?
Chris, you're on mute. I saw you raise your hand, but you're on mute.
Yeah, I haven't done the conversion, but I wouldn't mind doing it. I could barely get into my BJ8. I'm 6'1" and pretty heavy.
I'm 6'3", but I've got a bug eye, so that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I restored my BJ8, and before it was restored, the seat was pretty flat, and the seat back was broken a little bit and kind of raked back, and it was no problem. But now everything's puffy, and I'm a little more puffy too, and it's like the hokey pokey, right foot in and kind of slide in there and kind of wedge myself in. Once I'm in one position. That's it.
Bob,
yeah,
you're over
find
6
that
feet
article.
tall.
I'd like to know.
I'll forward it if I find it again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's somebody.
I
swear to God, I found it on the New England website.
Yeah, I do. I still have my banjo wheel too. I thought about getting a smaller wheel. That would probably help.
I asked Bob
Dave,
Abbott.
this is Steve Jacogian. One of our members is kind of a larger guy, and he did two of the things that you were saying. He kept the wheel, but there's someone, and I could track him down. There's someone in Texas that redoes the wheel and cuts the bottom off. So it's circular, and it's like a D-shaped wheel.
Yep.
I'm vertical.
Got the wheel on the way, so I'm past that point.
I'm sorry.
He's gone with a smaller wheel, Steve.
Okay.
I've got the wheel on the way, so I'm
all right. So you're past that, and
Yep.
he also changed the rake of the seat back. That helped quite a bit.
Right.
I could find out who did all of that work, and at least you could talk to that shop and they could tell you what they did. And
Right.
moving the seat back, you only get about an inch out of it. There's not much room, unfortunately.
Well, I was going to mention that Chris and Dave have two different issues with moving the seat back, because Dave, yours is not a BJ8, correct?
No, it's a
it's a 100.
100.
No,
yeah.
it's a BN4.
And
It's
BN4.
106.
yeah, and Chris, you have a BJ8, correct? Yeah, so you can't really move that seat back because it's got that side panel right behind the seat. You can't move it.
From what I
Go ahead, Bob Abbott. I mean, Bob Ewell, sorry. You're over 6 feet.
Yeah, on a BJ8, we've taken the driver's seat and taken the runners out from the floor and moved them closer to the tunnel. I mean, you get a half an inch, but you can move them closer to the tunnel and angled them slightly. And then the seat will go back about 2.5 inches.
Ooh.
And if you put some tapered shims under the seat base, it'll tilt the whole seat back
a bit, right? Sure.
And it makes a huge difference.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Bob, this is Ken. Can you hear me, Pete?
Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm 6'5" and a hefty weight size. I won't put that out there. But I've got a BJ8 and 100, and I've had to adjust the seat in both, and I did exactly what Bob said on my BJ8, and it does give you about 2 inches by re-angling the seat slightly. It's not really that noticeable in the car, but you can, as Bob said, move a little closer to the tunnel and then put the tilt rake on it. It gives you a whole lot of room.
Cool.
On my 100, we re-drilled. Alan Hendricks did this for me. Re-drilled holes in the seat pan and slid the seat back slightly. So I've accomplished that in those 2 ways in both cars.
Cool.
And we have a customer who is 6'5", and we also took the seat back and re-drilled it, put the holes lower down, so it tilted the back more as well, which he likes, but I don't like that position. It's too laid back. And of course we cut half of the seat cushion away as well, which helps. On a new seat cushion, if you cut half of it out, it really helps the situation too.
So Dave, what condition are the seats in? You're on mute, Dave. Dave, you're on mute. David, you're on mute.
I can take some, do some drilling, take some slots out, circles out of the cushion. That'll drop it a little bit. I saw somebody who did that online, and no, the interior is great. I mean, Tom has just babied this car. I'm
Right.
so lucky to have come across him. He's buying a Porsche 911. I said, "Why are you selling this car?" So he's got to be drummed out of the club.
There you
Bob,
go.
Bob, one other thing I did, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I also removed the wood strips on my 100.
Oh.
And that slides you down a little bit as well too. I was looking for every little inch I could get. So the wood strips we removed as well too. So
yeah, so there's David, there's runners there that hold the seat track.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, they're maybe a quarter or 3/8 of an inch thick.
But every little bit helps.
Yep.
Absolutely.
When you're 6'5". And I don't know if that's Bob, that may not be a good idea, but that's what we did as well too.
Thank you. I'll let you know where I go.
Okay, great. Other questions? Okay. Well, hopefully you guys all received my email. I don't know if you're noticing, I'm wearing our new regalia. So the Austin-Healey Club, we have it on our website. We just announced this this weekend. So Bob Ewell was out there at our delegates meeting. So this is our page. So if you go to the regalia section right here on the website, it gets you to the link there to Land's End. So you pick your item. There is a special running right now up until November 17th as it relates to that. So I've shown the examples of how you do. So you choose what shirt you're interested in and or hat or whatever is of interest to you. Then you apply your logo where you want it. Your logo selection right here. You can have it on the sleeve, you can have it on the chest, you can have it on the back. And so it's a brand new program we just rolled out, and it's an opportunity for with the holidays coming up, with where if you want some AHCA logoed items, you can get those right there on our website. Did I hear another question? I may have interrupted. I apologize.
Can I run something past everybody?
Absolutely, Bob.
We've been plagued with a BJ8 transmission that makes an intermittent squealing noise that we have pretty much nailed down to the input shaft where it fits into the flywheel on that spigot bushing in there. So we have changed that bushing twice now. We've boiled them in oil for 24 hours and put them back in. We've changed the front shaft. We changed the transmission, and we're still getting this noise, and we can't figure out what the hell's causing it. Or pulling the BJ8 transmission for the 4th time is not a lot of fun.
That's for sure.
I don't know if anybody's come across anything like that. But I can't determine if there's a fixed clearance between that bushing and the input shaft, or if it's just a sloppy fit, or it doesn't. We don't seem to be able to find anything that's out of place or out of the ordinary.
The input shaft looks correct, Bob, and there's no wear on that.
No, and we've checked the measurement with other shafts, and they're all within a thou or so.
Yeah. I don't have any thought. Anyone else have any thoughts for Bob Ewell regarding that?
Is that something that just developed over time, or is this a new restoration?
It was a new clutch. And after that, it all started.
This is a customer's car, Bob, right?
I'm sorry?
It's a customer's car?
Yes, it is. And I rebuilt the transmission and the overdrive, and we put a new clutch in, and then we started getting this noise.
What about the throwout bearing, Bob?
Well, we've tried 2 different throwout bearings, and at the moment we're on the roller throwout bearing, and not the carbon one.
Right.
Because we thought that might be it, but it's not.
You say that you've had the same situation with 2 different transmissions?
Yes.
Well,
I think it's not the transmission.
No. But the customer says he pulls up to a stoplight, and you'll be sitting there, and all of a sudden this thing squeals and takes off like a banshee, and every SUV around him stops and looks to see what's going on, and then he takes off and the noise quits.
Obviously, you've looked for something shiny in there.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway,
the pressure plate, Bob, the pressure plate, does that have fingers on it that engage with the throwout bearing?
Yes.
And no shiny surfaces there.
No, this is the late style diaphragm clutch, and with the carbon thrust, it has a plate that the carbon thrust rests on, but with the roller thrust, then you take that plate off and the fingers rest on the end of the roller.
That's
Is it the same kind of noise a throwout bearing makes, or is it a different squeal?
No, it's just a squeal. And we have the whole thing on the bench again now, and we're all standing around it, giving it knowing looks and not knowing what the hell to do with it next.
So it's intermittent?
It's intermittent, yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
That's the worst kind.
The only thing I can think of would be misalignment.
Yeah, but it's difficult to misalign the bell housing with the back of the motor.
The bushing is only contacting the round part of the input shaft, right? Not the spline at all, right? I mean, it's not, can't touch that part, right? It's just holding it up around the outside. Is that right?
Well, when you put the shaft into the bushing,
yeah,
it really doesn't touch it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure in operation that it does.
Yeah.
But there's clearance all the way around it.
Oh.
Is it only when you shift, or does it go away?
No, it's when you're sitting still.
It goes away when you shift in gear?
When it's in gear and you're driving down the highway, it doesn't do it. It's just when you're sitting still.
Sitting still with the clutch depressed, or the clutch or the car in neutral?
We told the owner to try it both ways, and he said it doesn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
Now he maintains that this happens all the time. We haven't been able to replicate it at all.
So when he's brought the car to you, you can't replicate it?
No.
Oh.
He did bring us a recording of it on his phone.
Okay. Okay.
So Bob, you're sitting at a light, and the car is in neutral, and your foot is off the clutch, and it starts squealing. If you were to put the clutch in and put it in gear and start to drive away, the squeal stops?
This is something we haven't been able to determine. We think that the car is in gear and the clutch is depressed. That's what we think.
When it's squealing.
When it's squealing. And then the guy takes off and it goes away.
Could it be that it's losing hydraulic pressure? I mean, could it be that the slave is just, it doesn't have enough pressure to hold the pressure plate in, and it's just not leaking brake clutch fluid, but just the slave is just releasing even though the clutch is down.
Oh, well, you'd get one or two things then. Either the engine revs would die or the car would move.
Oh, I thought you said that it was making noise and it was taking off. It was moving.
No, goes away then.
Yeah, when it's sitting.
Still.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
How's the pressure plate?
Well, it's all new.
Bob, is the hydraulic line to the slave new also?
The hydraulic line and the slave cylinder and the master cylinder to the clutch and the brakes, for that matter, are all new.
Oh, okay. Because I had a problem with the flexos and the clutch one time. They would just seal up and wouldn't release at all, but that's not your problem.
No, I know that problem. We've run into it too.
Yeah, not a good one.
Particularly with the one on the rear brakes.
Now that's a mystery.
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll keep persevering with it and see how we get on.
Okay. Well, be interesting to hear the result with that. So.
Any chance that the clutch is hanging up and not fully releasing?
Oh.
Almost sounds like it's not fully releasing and slipping and squealing.
It might be, but there's no sign of it, and there's no reason to believe that it is. But you know, this is stuff that we're having to check out.
Yeah, I was going to suggest you check that rubber hose also, because.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna have to come up with something. So we'll keep going until we find something.
Hey, Bob, the car wasn't making the noise prior to the clutch being changed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But the gearbox was changed at the same time, so that.
I like what the gentleman just said just a second ago, where it's possibly where the clutch isn't releasing or it's stuck in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, we'll check that out.
Okay. Well, we look forward to hearing about that our next meeting. So December 11th is our next tech call. And on December 9th, I'm having a tech session here at my place in Mansfield, Mass. We've got a new member, Francis Jakes, who's got a BJ. He's got a Buckeye Sprite that's been sitting for a number of years, and our objective is to see if we can get this running for Frank. So those of you who are in the area, you're interested in joining us. It's Saturday morning, 9 o'clock on December 9th, and hopefully we'll have this running by the end of the day. But we'll see. Bruce, anything else you want to share before we close?
No, I think I'm good tonight, Peter. I think you've covered everything, and thank you again for your hosting. And we'll look forward to the next session and the tech session on Saturday.
Yeah, December 9th, not this Saturday.
No, December 9th. I'm sorry.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you all. Hope you have a good month. And David, good luck with your new BN4, and hopefully it works well with getting a little more room in there for your 6-foot frame, 6'4" frame. I can't imagine that. I'm only 5'7", so I can't even imagine what you're dealing with. So,
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You bet.
Right,
Good seeing you, Richard.
thank you for your help. Thank you for your help.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter.
Night, guys.
Good night.